Good evening, everybody. Happy month of May to all of you out there in the Warchant TV, Warchant Multimedia audience. He's Ira Schoffel, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang, and we're smashing it up on a Monday night presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. More on Russ in just a little bit. Good evening, Ira. How are you on a Monday again, now in the month of May?
I'm great, Tom. How you doing? Did you do anything for Cinco de Mayo? Any big festivities your way?
No festivities. It was an extremely quiet weekend in our house. I suppose that's a sign of age. Ira, it was, I think, effective temperature of 47 yesterday. It is refusing to warm up. I know you're going to touch the 90s this week down in Florida State.
47 sounds pretty sweet.
It is. It can be, but it was one of those foggy, windy, rainy days. I think my weather pattern more resembles Florida State's portal activity than maybe the weather pattern in Tallahassee. It's been kind of cool. So we are shifting our mindsets towards some off-season doings for Florida State football, one of which is actually a big picture item for the athletic department as a whole. Ira's not going to be here on the Smash next week unless maybe he's popping in as a guest, because he's going to be in Amelia Island covering the ACC spring meetings, which they've got potential out there. So Ira, you could go there, expand on that if you want, but where is your head at right now as a managing editor of a Florida State sports website, given that the portal didn't provide as much pizzazz, and there's a lot to be done in different sports. So where's your mind at right now?
Yeah, I don't think like you said, the portal has not provided a lot of pizzazz. Corey actually just wrote a column kind of about what this says about a quiet portal season in the spring, what it says about Florida State, what it says about the players who chose not to leave, and maybe what it says about the program overall. But also, there's still some activity. I think Matt Lasser posted on the premium recruiting board, a defensive lineman who is getting interest from Florida State. They obviously had another defensive lineman on campus last week. So it's clear that defensive line and probably receiver are still positions that they're checking to see what's out there. But they're not going to be able to do a whole lot of shopping because not a lot of people left. So that's obviously the big thing. Recruiting's going really well for Florida State right now, especially offensive line recruiting. Mm-hmm. That class that Alex Atkins is looking to put together could be an all-timer. And it's something I wouldn't mind talking about a little bit about, because there's been a lot of talk about Alex Atkins developing high school players and that whole topic. But, this class, they've got one commitment already, Solomon Thomas, who's the number one interior offensive lineman in the country out of Jacksonville. He's committed to Florida State. The guy today, Josh Petty. I wanted to say Pettis. I knew that wasn't right. Josh Petty, number two interior offensive lineman in the country, a 5-star out of Georgia, is also could be leaning towards Florida State. Steve Wolfong put in a pick for him today. That would be huge. And then Zaire Addison. There's several guys. There's 4 or 5 big time offensive linemen that Florida State's in on. If they could get that class together, and the cool thing about offensive line is that's one of those positions where you can put together a massive class. Once you start stockpiling DBs or running backs or receivers, I remember back in the day, remember when they had, this is before your time, but they had Leon Washington, Hollywood Clayton, and Lorenzo Booker in the same class. And everybody's like, there's no way you can get, all these stud running backs together. And they did come. Clayton ended up leaving. But offensive line's a position where you certainly could get a bunch of dudes to come together and say, hey, we're going to be the future for Florida State. So that's exciting. And then, like you said, the ACC meetings are next week, and that is going to be wild. So there's plenty going on for a May in Tallahassee.
Yeah, you're right about that particular time with Lorenzo Booker, Leon Washington. I forgot about Hollywood Clayton, but I do remember Lorenzo's commitment. That wasn't like a normal thing that you would see a commitment, especially down in Clearwater. It wouldn't make it that far on television, but it did.
He was the first big one to go national. Yeah.
It was, I think, did SportsCenter have it, I think? But go ahead.
I think you're right. I think Tom Lemming led the whole thing, and the story goes that he thought he was going to go to Notre Dame. Tom Lemming always liked to promote the Notre Dame kids, and everybody thought Booker was going to go to Notre Dame, and then he ended up pulling the swerve and picking Florida State. And I think Tom Lemming and Gene Williams had some back and forth through the years over that one.
Well, there's been some back and forth in this industry across a lot of fronts, but you're right. To see that Florida State could potentially have two of the top two, according to the On3 consensus, interior offensive linemen in one class. That would be quite the statement. And I do think, Ira, that, in terms of Alex Atkins and development of high school players, there is a wave coming of a couple few kids that maybe can buck that trend. And I think both of us on the JCS side really love Andre Otto, but I know you and I both love Andre Otto, and everybody seems to really like the potential, the versatility of what he brings to the table. Lucas Simmons obviously is a player that they like a lot, and so is Jalen Early. This could be on the brink in the next year, maybe 2 seasons at most, of having that development thing like checked off, that box checked off. We've seen Mike Norvell do that, Ira, as a head coach, checking off boxes about high school development, high school recruiting versus transfer portal. This could be a year, maybe the next 15 to 20 games in which you see Alex Atkins take that next step as well.
Yeah, and that's why I was not worried about it like some people were. I mean, if you think about it, go back to, and I know it's a lot of people have raised this concern, so it's not like one person or two people, it's a lot of people. But where I would push back on it is think about what he was recruiting, the position he was recruiting from for the first 2 or 3 years. They were a bad football team. And anything's going to be accentuated, in my opinion, on the lines of scrimmage because you're not those are the premium positions where there's not a lot of people. I asked Alex Atkins once. This is such a obvious answer, but I think it's important for people to think about. I was like, why is it so hard to evaluate offensive linemen, especially coming out of high school? And he's like, well, there's just less people of that size. There are a million fast receivers. There are a million fast DBs and running backs. There's not a lot of human beings walking around that are 6'4" to 6'5", 300 pounds, sometimes 320, 300, athletic enough to move and play in their system. So now you're taking a small group of people, candidates, prospects, and then you're threading the needle there, and then you've got to hit on them because nobody hits on everything. You see it in the NFL. So that is a challenge for everybody. Then when you're coming off of 3-6, 5-7, those poor first few seasons, I mean, I think they were really up against it. They signed some kids those first couple classes, but they were not, they didn't pan out. But I don't think you could judge them like the kids that they signed those first 3 years. I don't know how much they're just trying to go get guys. Maybe you'll hit on a couple. And a lot of those guys have left. And then they recruited over them with the portal, which meant more guys were probably going to leave because, hey, you just brought in these portal guys. Now I'm not going to play. But I think these last couple classes, as you said, I think Otto's really good. I think Lucas Simmons has a lot of potential. I think Jalen Early, everything we hear, they really like Jalen Early, and Armella's shown progress since they moved to guard. So, it may be coming. And then now he's been the last year or two been a recruit on success. So I just, to me, I'm not concerned about it. I'm not going to hold the kids he signed those first 3 years against him too much.
Andre Otto is a question mark and a point of question here from Keith in Spring Hill. Hello, Keith. Good evening to you. We can get more questions for Ira and me as the show goes along, and also file some questions away. If you've looked in the chat, you've seen Director Ben Spicer has announced that Michael Langston is set to be here talking about specifically recruiting, maybe a little portal news as well. So if you got questions for Michael, he'll be here around 7:40 or so. He's going to do the last 20 minutes or so with us, answering your questions. So please feel free, Facebook, X, YouTube, put those questions aside, and we will mark them. Keith wants to know about Andre Otto. His cousin is an offensive line coach for a college in Rhode Island, and he recruited Otto and said he's a great kid with lots of potential. The potential's there, Ira, and I keep coming back to the agility. He seems to be, if you drew a line between a defensive lineman and a quarterback and say a pass rush drill, it's very hard to get outside of Andre Otto being directly in your path and square up and in a good position to block and to catch that pass rush. Or what do you think about what you've seen from Andre Otto?
Yeah, it's funny when people read Keith's question, they may think, well, why Florida State send a guy that was being recruited? I don't know, is it Brown? Like, who was recruiting him in Rhode Island? URI, but that's where he was early in the process. Like, he's a guy, if Andre Otto turns out to be what we think he is, I mean, I think he looks like a really good offensive lineman. He's been very impressive to me. And when he asked what he looks like, as you said, he's athletic, but he's not afraid to put his nose in there, man. He is a physical kid, and he's getting stronger. He's already got some strength. He's a really smart kid, so I think he's picked things up quickly. But he didn't have a lot of interest early coming out of Key West. And I don't think he did camp circuit. I mean, the problem is you're down there. It's not like it's easy to get to. A kid in Atlanta can go to 30 camps. A kid in Orlando or Tampa. It's harder when you're down there. So he wasn't really seen. Florida State saw him, loved him, ended up getting. I mean, he was considering he was considering. Obviously, I think Stanford, but like schools that are not known for football. He's a really bright kid, so he had some really great academic offers. I think the Ivy Leagues were involved, but in terms of like football powers, Florida State was really the main one, and they got him. And yeah, man, I think I think they definitely have a find there.
No, you're right. It was slim pickings on the list. I'm looking right now at his On3 profile. Florida Atlantic, Coastal Carolina, Princeton is the Ivy League that you remember there, among others. But again, typically you like to see when you land a trench recruit, Tennessee, Auburn, Georgia, LSU, not Coastal Carolina, Florida Atlantic, Princeton. But that's where Florida State was with Andre, and he's much more than just a cerebral player. You got to see it, everybody, in the spring showcase where he ends the game at right tackle. Now that he has shown that in a spring showcase, I think they initially were thinking interior for him, but it's versatility out of Andre Otto that has been very impressive to me, Ira. We saw that leading up to the showcase, but since everybody got to see it, it looks like he might be a Darius Washington in the making, in the sense that he could play across all the positions at the line as time goes on.
Yeah, like you said, we don't get to talk too much about positions unless Mike Norvell comments on it from practice. But yeah, he's looked good at tackle. I think he definitely is going to be a tackle. I think that's, like you said, he could have versatility, could play both, but I could definitely see him at tackle down the road. And and that's where I didn't, because of the schools that are recruiting him, and then you talk to him, and he's such a bright kid, and his interests are like film. He wants to be a filmmaker, legitimately wants to not just like be like YouTube channel. Like he wants to be a filmmaker. He's studying that, and that's what he really liked to do. And I just didn't know what to expect. I didn't expect him to be that physical, but I like him a lot.
We've got a huge contribution from a friend of the program that met Ira just a short time ago. He was a big contributor last week, and Harry Detweiler. Thank you, Harry. I'm going to say thank you and get your question on the board in just a second, but we got to speak more to State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, who sponsors this program the entirety of the year. Russ is an awesome Nole. I mean, a first-class Florida State Seminole, top to bottom, supports the athletic department. He, of course, has supported Warchant.com and so many varieties over the years, from a website to now a multimedia network. He's been there every step of the way. And Russ Voorhis can help you in the states of Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. You see the brick and mortar locations below on the screen. Ira, this is a very knowledgeable person in the industry of insurance, and State Farm agent Russ Voorhis can help Florida State fans, while also maybe having an enlightened conversation about Seminole sports as well, as he does.
Yeah, no question. And he's got plenty of experience in the business. Any insurance needs you have, you can reach out to him. And he's got those two offices in the Jacksonville area, but can handle Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and still give you the customer service you want. Plus, you're dealing with a Nole, and he loves, if you do call and ask for any information, just mention that you're a Florida State fan, that you watch the Smash. You don't have to mention me. Mention Tom. Mention Tom and Warchant, and he'll be thrilled that he's just, it's a chance to do business with fellow Noles. And we can't speak highly enough about Russ.
We really like when Noles support what we do. We'll take any sponsor who provides good service, good customer service is wonderful for us to be able to message about. When it's a Nole, it's got that little extra connection to it. So again, for those of you listening on the podcast on demand, RussVorhis, that's russvorhis.com. Harry, thank you very much. That's a couple weeks in a row with a giant contribution. Your question, by all means, ask whatever you want. Will we be in the ACC at the end of the year? Ira, he's wondering if this is your last trip to Amelia Island for work.
Thanks, Harry. Appreciate it. And Harry, when I met him, he talked about he reads the content more than he watches the content. So I appreciate it. Don't feel like you got to make a contribution when you ask a question, but we appreciate it, Harry. And I don't think at the end of the calendar year, I think it'll be known that they're out. But I don't know that they'll be out until 2025. But yeah, if I had to bet, I think before, I think that August 15th deadline, if that is the thing, I know the court proceedings going on, and I know, and Harry can speak to this, but because he's got a background there, but the legal proceeding, I don't think is going to be done by then. But I do feel like they'll be able to at least announce that they're planning to leave.
Okay, so there is a nuance there. Let's discuss that very quickly. They could still be in ongoing litigation across two states. The Clemson case could still be going on, but you think that Florida State could deliver its notice before August 15th to say we're not going to be in this conference next year, all the while that those things are not resolved? That's a possibility?
I think it's a possibility. Again, I'm not, speaking for Florida State. I mean, the powers that be at Florida State might be watching this or hear what I said and be like, "What? There's no way." But to me, it's two separate issues. And that's kind of one of the things that's been going on right now, as I talked about on Jeff's show, where the ACC doesn't really want Florida State and Clemson to be in these meetings, like when they have the spring meetings next week, because hey, you're not really with us. You're more against us than you are with us, so you shouldn't be in our meetings. And Florida State and Clemson's point is we haven't decided to leave. We just want to know what it's going to cost if we do leave, especially Florida State's case. They're basically just saying we want a judge to tell us, no, we don't have to pay for the grant of rights. No, we don't have to pay, or maybe we can pay less than whatever they're saying. So that doesn't change whether or not they want to get out. I mean, they want to get out. They clearly want to get out. So are they going to, if the court case is dragging on and they want to get out and they have a feeling that if they announce they could get into a new conference by 2026, then you let the legal stuff work out later. Maryland announced they were leaving before their litigation was done. So
True.
That definitely, I think that's on the table. I think it would be much cleaner to not do that. But I think it's on the table. I have a hard time seeing them wait a whole nother year to decide based on what the courts are saying.
So, in that spirit, as you're approaching and driving down I-10 over to Amelia Island next week, what kind of fireworks do you expect, Ira? I mean, more off the record stuff than on the record stuff. Expect the unexpected. Is every interview of any athletic director going to be like must record stuff? Like, what's your vision on how that's going to go?
I'm gonna, this week I'm definitely going to talk to some sources around the conference, not just Florida State, but around the conference, to get a better feel for it. But everybody I know in the media that's planning to cover it or has covered it in the past thinks that, I mean, it could be wild because it was a little wild last year. They kept it under wraps, but things got really heated behind the scenes. Again, we didn't hear about, we knew stuff was going on, but we didn't know exactly what. What we found out later is Michael Alford, like when the door was shut, kind of, I won't say pitched a fit, but he made it be clear that they were not happy just going business as usual with the revenue split. And he wanted them to seriously consider it because the feeling until that point, and I think you mentioned the Magnificent Seven tweet from Brett McMurphy
right.
on the day that the spring meeting started. That tweet, that information was leaked out. Ross Dellinger had a similar report right at the same time. That information was, I think, put out by some of these schools that are interested in possibly leaving to fan the flames, to make the ACC understand that they were serious. Because I think until that point, the frustration from Florida State side was, we're asking and asking and asking, can we get a bigger piece of the pie? Look at the TV ratings, look who brings in the money. And they just were basically told to pound sand by the ACC. So that was when they were trying to really kind of make the ACC understand how serious they were. And then again, behind closed doors, I think Michael Alford let them know how serious he was at that meeting. And it kind of got contentious and heated, but it never boiled over. This one, I mean, I got no idea. This one, there's lawsuits, but they've tried. The ACC doesn't want Florida State and Clemson to be there. Florida State and Clemson want. I mean, are they going to try to shut the door? Is Michael Alford going to be banging at the door to let me in? I mean, I'm joking. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think it's going to be really difficult for all parties involved to play nice. For example, last year at this meeting, some of the other schools made pointed comments about FSU and about their barking and how it wasn't becoming of a conference member. Well, now, man, you've got the two biggest football powers in your conference suing to get out of your conference, and you're suing them. And North Carolina's Board of Trustees has come out and said the ACC may not be where we need to be. So, and then you've got the revenue split, the revenue disparity between the Big Ten, the SEC, and the ACC, what the college football playoff is going to look like, what Greg Sankey's trying to do by freezing out some of these other conferences. I can't even imagine what it's going to be like. But I'll be there to cover it, Tom. It should be interesting.
We're looking forward to those reports. I think Mike Norvell can't practice enough the response. Well, we're just so excited about our schedule this year. We've got a great game coming up in Dublin at the end of August, and we've got a wonderful schedule this year. We're looking forward to playing that schedule. As he's asked about, what do you think? What about the implications of this? What do you think? The implications? Well, we've got a wonderful schedule. Can't wait to play Georgia Tech in Dublin. We're on to Cincinnati, in short, will be his approach. We do have some non-recruiting questions, of course. File those recruiting questions away from Michael Langston as he joins the program here on Monday Smash in just a little bit. Out of bubblegum, how are they going to get under the scholarship count? Ira, do you dare question coaching staff's ability to make the numbers work?
I mean, numbers always work. That
Yeah.
I mean, they're the numbers working out is undefeated. Like in the history of college football, fans, and so much so that for a long time, really before the portal, I'm just not even worried about it. Like we'd have people on the message boards ask us at Warchant, "Hey, where are we at with the numbers?" And it's like, man, it's going to work out. They may be a couple over, a couple under. It's going to work out. Either guys are going to leave, or guys are going to be medically disqualified, or some players that are signed aren't going to arrive. But like one way or another, it always works out. This one is unique though, man, because and it's challenging sometimes because we don't know exactly every single person that's on scholarship. There are probably 3 or 4 players on this current team that we have either thought they were on scholarship or not on scholarship at various times over the last few years. There have been players that have been on scholarship for part of a year, then not on scholarship another part of the year. So like it can be a fluid situation. It's not always black and white, and we can't get a list from FSU. These guys are on scholarship and these guys are not. But right now, yeah, we think that they're over. Now, could you have a couple kids who are borderline medical disqualification? That's possible. Could you have a couple kids who are older players that maybe decide not to play football, or could you have a couple kids that are signed that maybe gray shirt or not going to on track to qualify? I mean, there's a lot of different avenues. The one thing we know for sure is they're going to, whatever the limit is. And I heard Corey and Aslan like joking about it the other day on Wake Up. Could we just lie? Could we just make up? Oh yeah, we're fine. We met our there. You do have to submit like to compliance. NCAA FSU's compliance department has to certify everybody that's on scholarship and non-scholarship. It's got to be documented. So you can't just make it up as you go along. And so we'll have to see how it goes. It'll get worked out, but I don't know how you bring in more than 1 or 2 players. And if they could do that, then that's fine. But it's going to be dicey, I think.
Yeah, I agree. This is the most bumpy it could possibly be in an era such as this because you do have scholarship reductions. It's over 2 years, but I don't think you're going to spend all 5 of your reductions next season. That doesn't seem feasible. And you already have the signees that you do. So I think gray shirts is a good potential answer there, Ira. That makes a lot of sense, which is, again, that means your scholarship would kick in the spring semester
Right.
and you would arrive in the fall and, they'd make it work for you some way, somehow. But yeah, a little bit bumpy. It will be interesting. Yes, out of bubblegum. Good follow up. But it is certainly will be. Get down or lay down wants to know, will the defense next season have a higher floor because of depth? Will that depth translate into a higher ceiling? What do you think, Ira? We have talked a lot about this in spring camp. The roster is deeper. There's a higher quantity of good players. But what do you think that means for a floor of the defense versus ceiling, given that last year this unit, especially the way they finished, was, dominant?
Yeah, I don't know. I think this defense could be really good, and I think it could be as good as next year as last year. And in some cases, I think certain positions could be better. But I don't know if I'd say the floor could be better because the reason I would push back on that is last year you had so many experienced players that you knew what you were going to get out of them. And you had like a lot of second and third team guys that you knew what you were going to get out of them. This year, there are a couple starters that we don't know exactly what you're going to have out of them because they've never started before. I mean, Darrell Jackson, we know what he looks like. He is all airplane team. Like he gets off the bus or he gets off the airplane, every NFL scout in the world would be like, that's the guy we want. But we have to see what he looks like over the course of 12 games. Same thing with Marvin Jones Jr. I mean, unbelievable potential. Earl Little, unbelievable potential. But these guys are guys we have not seen in this defense with Adam Fuller, how they play during the course of a game. Whereas last year, man, all those guys, it felt like, other than Fentrell Cypress and Jeremiah Byers, there were a couple of older transfers that came in last year. Keon Coleman, I think we had a pretty good idea. But for the most part, this to me is a little bit different because you have some questions about guys. I think the potential at cornerback, it's crazy to say how well Jarian Jones and Ronaldo Green just got drafted, but I think Azaria Thomas may have a higher ceiling than those guys. But,
Yeah.
There are other positions where, and I think, I think Marvin Jones could be Marvin Jones, I think he could be in the ballpark of a Jared Verse. I'm not saying he's going to be Jared Verse. He could be in the ballpark, and Patrick Payton's going to be way better. I mean, Mike Norvell said he's one of the most improved players on this team.
Yep.
And he was great last year. He was really good last year. So you could be better at that position, but I don't know that the overall floor is better, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I mean, to me, just a broad sweep. Linebackers not as good on the front line.
Right.
So you might have some
now the floor there might be better. Possibly.
Right. Yeah, you might have some surprising developments or on schedule as to what the coaching staff is talking about. They feel good about that room, is what Mike Norvell said when he was speaking at that Battle's End event before the spring showcase. Like, he feels very good about that room. Okay, still, Bethune-Deloach, hard to replace. So it's hard for me to get behind that and say that it's better. I think Akeem Dent was extremely important last year, whether it's Devontae Brown or Conrad Hussey or somebody else.
But real quick on the linebackers you just mentioned, sorry to interrupt, but
yep.
I do think they've got 4 that you feel better about maybe than you did last year. Like, I think they feel better about the 2s, I think, possibly, especially once Omar Graham got hurt. I mean, they were having to play Blake Nicholson and Huss in Cryer as true freshmen last year.
Yep.
They might be second teamers again. So to me, that second team defensive tackle may be better, or a linebacker group may be better than it was a year ago.
Yeah, you had 3 last year, and then it was, I'm not so sure. You're right. You might have 4 or 5 this year that you feel okay about. And in different situations, that can help too. Passing situations, early down against the run. We know Lundy's going to be out there in most, but certainly, down a distance against the run. He was one of the best linebackers in terms of grade on Pro Football Focus.
And you were going to talk about safety. That's a similar situation, right? Like, they may not be as good as Akeem Dent at that second spot, but overall, the safety depth might be better.
Right. And if the development is fast for, it continues for Conrad Hussey, who got a lot of burn last year, then, it could change in a heartbeat. And Devontae Brown is somebody that impressed a lot of the staff at Warchant when they got to see skill position players. Like, okay, this was a take that was like a keyhole, because you have his former coordinator, you've got his former high school coach, so they knew exactly what they were getting in Devontae Brown, and with Randy Shannon and Patrick Surtain making that decision to say yes to the transfer. So it all could work out. Corner is interesting to me too, because Renardo was really good, but I think Fentrell, if he's better and Azaria Thomas is ascending, there's a chance of that position.
Right.
It's a fascinating discussion. I think part of it too, Ira, depends on what does Grady Kelly look like after he spends a summer in the weight room with Josh Storms. What do they want to do with him? Because I thought he was pretty good at plugging the run, but he didn't look like a body by Storms type player just yet. And I think an offseason with him will help as well.
Yeah, and if I just could touch on Azaria real quick, because I want to be clear on what we're saying. There are certain things I think that Renardo Green did really well that I don't think Azaria Thomas is going to do better than Renardo Green. I think in terms of press man coverage, I think Renardo was exceptional. Coming up to play the run, Renardo was exceptional. Physical corner. Where I think Azaria could be better than Renardo is in the playmaking ability. Like, he seems to have a little bit more interception potential, that kind of thing. That is why we're saying that.
Yeah, there's a chance that this is more of a ball hawking group. And if Marvin Jones is really that improved, as the coaching staff said, from the day he arrived to the end of spring camp, just a meteoric rise. If that's the case, then they're going to be in position to go make some plays on the ball as well. Briley asks or offers up, personally, I think I was more excited last year and more nervy about this team. Your thoughts? I think that's fair. There's more unknowns this year.
Yeah, totally natural. But I also, there's no question at all, no notes, Briley. But I do think that doesn't mean there's not a ton of potential. Like, it's just, again, we just had so many known commodities last year, and this year you don't. But again, this is like, I was listening to Aslan and Corey on Wake Up Warchant talk about DJ Uyunglele, and I think they came at it from both angles. He's probably not going to be as good as Jordan Travis, but could he be this or could he be that? And it's like, I'm not ready to say he's not going to be as good as Jordan Travis. I know it sounds crazy. People are screen grabbing this right now, Tom. That's fine. I'm just not ready to say that. Did he look as good as Jordan Travis this spring? Did he look as good as Jordan Travis did over the last year or so? No. But that doesn't, he's still got 4 months between the end of the spring to there, and the kid's got enormous talent. So I'm not ready to say that they took a step back at quarterback. We'll see.
Yeah, again, if you look at his stats from last year, the player is the threat of Jordan Travis was always ever present. And I think it affected how defenses played Florida State. But if you're just looking at the production last year, he completed 64% of his passes, 20 touchdowns, 2 picks, 2,700 yards. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if DJ went for 3,300 yards. The 10-to-1 interception or touchdown interception ratio will be tough to beat.
That's where, yeah, that to me, I don't have much doubt at all. The DJ is going to be a productive passer. They're going to hit big plays, that the offense is going to move. Where the one thing, like, that's the one concern I have is that Jordan never turned the ball over. So you were always in plus field position. You just never gave up free cheapies on offense. Like, you never set up the other team at your own 20-yard line. Some teams do that. Now, DJ's not been a huge turnover guy. He wasn't last year. But I think they're going to move the ball. I think they're going to make plays. I'm excited about him.
Well, and the hot take here is he could rush for more yards than Jordan did. Right. And I get that college tracks sacks and that reduces from your total. But last year, Jordan ran for just 176 yards. So again, the college game accounts for things differently. 70 plus attempts, 73 to be precise. 176 yards. That's a 2.4 average. Ira, the year before, was 5.1. The year before it was 4.0, and he ran for 530 yards. It wouldn't shock me if DJ ran for 220 or 250 this season. They put it on film, and I think they did so very intentionally in the showcase, that they want other teams to know that if there's a read option, DJ will carry it out, or they will just call his number and let him run, not just in third and short situations, but maybe in neutral situations as well.
And I thought when we saw him this spring, I think he runs the zone read really well. I think some of the times he gave, it was really well. Very good decisions. And sometimes when he keeps it, and again, in the spring showcase where they're blowing the whistle as soon as anybody gets within 10 yards of him, you're not going to see what those plays ended up being. Well, man, you add a couple of 8 to 12 to 15-yard runs to a drive, it changes the whole complexion of a drive. And it changes how the defense has to play you because, again, they can't just sit back.
Doesn't mean that they're going to be more afraid of DJ's legs. It's just that he might amass more stats by the end of the year. And look, that matters. We felt like there wasn't enough out of the quarterback on the ground last year. We'll see if it happens this year. Terry says, and I'm going to edit it, enjoyed meeting Ira. Meeting, I'm sure he means meeting Ira at Thomasville Rose Fest. Now that the portal is closed, where does Ham go? Oh, basketball. Where does Ham go to finish filling out his roster? All right, Ira, how does Leonard Hamilton finish filling out his roster now that the portal is closed? What do you think?
Yeah, and it was nice to meet Terry and his wife as well. It was really cool up there. We go up to Thomasville a good bit, and it was cool to see them. They're transplants. They live elsewhere in Florida, but moved up to the fair city of Thomasville because they're Noles, and they want to be close to Tallahassee. I think – so basically I put up a story on the site a couple of days ago looking at where they're at. Basically, they've got 9 spots filled. They've got the 2 returning players, Chandler Jackson, 2 returning players, Chandler Jackson, and who's the other Baba. Not Baba. It's Taylor Bowen.
There you go.
Taylor Bowen at forward and Chandler Jackson, the 2 returning players. They've got 3 high school signees coming in, including a 4-star point guard. Then they've got 4 transfers coming in. So they've got 9 players right now. They've got 4 spots open. There's some players still in the portal that Florida State's talking to. So you might be able to add 1 or 2 players from the portal, maybe 2 or 3 players from the portal. I wouldn't be surprised if Leonard can pull an international player out of his hat. He's done that many a times, that you'll go into the summer and they're like one under scholarship, and then he goes and finds a kid from like Baba Miller from Spain or somebody from Nigeria. Michael Ojo was a guy that nobody really had heard of. So I think he might pull up 1 or 2 international players and then a couple more transfer portal guys. What this team's going to look like, I'm not selling you on it's going to be good, but I do think they're going to have 13 players.
Good. That's probably an idea. Know when not to pick.
That's the goal. The goal is to get to the race is to 13 scholarship basketball players.
Hopefully that's not the race to in total of wins next year, but we'll see. the part of sales is knowing when not to pitch something. So that's a good idea. Zyler asked, and this is a great question for you, Ira, because your butt has been on a bench in a courtroom for an awful lot of time the last few weeks. Did the Leon County judge recommend mediation or force mediation between Florida State and the ACC? Because he's heard both.
So it's a requirement in this court circuit, but and Judge Cooper is a big advocate of it. Is that they do that they do sit down for the mediation process, but it's not required that they agree on anything. So basically, what they require is before this finishes in the court, because they just believe, and Judge Cooper strongly believes, that the court isn't the best place to decide a lot of business relationships, that they're going to require you to actually sit down with somebody and talk through your issues and see if there is a way to work it out without it going through the court system. That doesn't mean they have to do it. Like, it doesn't mean that they have to come to an agreement. They could sit through the meeting. It's almost like if your kids, people that have kids that can relate to this, if your kids are fighting and you make them, let's talk this out. Like, why are you mad at her? Why is she mad at you? And I'm going to make you guys talk it out. And then we're going to make you guys hug. And we're going to make you act like you love each other. And then as soon as they walk out the room, they're sticking their tongue out at the other one. Like, they can't make them come to an agreement, but they can make them actually talk. And so that's what they've told them they have to do.
Again, they're in that period right now of, is it 28 days, 7 plus 21, where Florida State needed to basically clean up their work or show their work, as we put it, as though it was almost a high school or middle school assignment where they didn't carry out the math problem the way they're supposed to. So Florida State had 7 days to clean up their work for Leon County, and then the ACC had 21 in order to form their response. So that's where they're locked in right now.
They were supposed to have start the mediation process, but basically both sides said we need more time to even decide who we would pick as the mediator. Like, they haven't even decided on who they would agree to be the mediator. So they asked for an extension, and Judge Cooper gave an extension. So that is another thing that's been pushed back.
R. Wilmer says, still would be nice to see the Raycom and the ESPN contracts. Did you smile at that, Ira? I don't know that we talked about it here on Smash, but, given that in the South Carolina proceedings, it may come to light what exactly these very clandestine agreements actually say. Did that make you smirk a little bit?
Well, so there's 3 venues right now, right? There's the North Carolina, the ACC suing Clemson and Florida State in North Carolina. That judge was like, I want to see a little bit of it, but I'm not necessarily asking for the whole thing. So North Carolina judge, that's where he was ruling. The South Carolina judge said, no, it's going to be introduced. We're going to get to see it. The ESPN contract, which even the schools haven't been able to possess before. And so that was kind of a win for Clemson up in South Carolina. Judge Cooper's going to do the same thing in Florida. I have no doubt in my mind, just things he said during the proceedings so far. He just hasn't gotten to that point yet because they had these other hearings. But if say Clemson, the South Carolina judge hadn't done that, it still was going to be made available in Tallahassee. Judge Cooper, I think, is definitely going to make them produce it too. Now, whether or not they make them turn it over to the public is another question, because it is a business document. The judge could say, okay, we're only going to release this portion of it. We're not going to. What ESPN says is they don't want the numbers, all the financials, to be released and some of the terms of the agreement. So it could be something that's redacted. But I think Florida was always going to, Judge Cooper was always going to make them turn it over too, I think.
That's funny still. This far away. What financials? Ira, I feel like it's going to be a big nothing burger, because these contracts, almost working backwards when you see the distribution to the universities for the SEC or the Big Ten or these other conferences. You can work backwards and see exactly.
You find out the numbers.
Right. So what is so special about the ACC deal? If it's nothing, that's okay. Go ahead.
I was going to say 2 things, and I agree with you for the most part. 2 things that have come out since this process started was one huge one, which we found out when Florida State filed their lawsuit, and Florida State only found this out because they sent attorneys up to North Carolina to actually inspect the document, and that's where they saw in there that the grant of rights is till 2036, and ESPN has the right to have the TV contract till 2036, but they also have an out in 2037 that we didn't know about. And the fact that it was originally supposed to be decided in 2035, but Jim Phillips let them ESPN extend it to 2037. So that's a big thing. It's a big deal that there's some wiggle room for ESPN maybe to get out of the ACC contract. And Florida State wouldn't have known that if they didn't go up and actually see the contract. The other thing is, excuse me, some of the language, like what Clemson's suing on the basis of, and now Florida State's starting to tap into this language too, is there's questions about, does the language say, in terms of the grant of rights, does the language say you're only subject to the grant of rights as long as you're a member of the conference, or are you subject to it until 2036? And their point is, the Clemson's point, and Florida State's been piggybacking on this, is if we leave the conference and pay whatever the exit fees are and figure it out, like, do you really have these rights till 2036 or do you not? And that's all stuff that, like, again, if you hadn't actually seen the documents, you wouldn't know. So I think whatever the ESPN is citing the business side of it and the trade secrets and all that, but I think those are some of this, and there might be other language in there as well that they don't want to see out there.
Hopefully there isn't. Daniel Yell, clean it up at 2025. That's the thing, is like, if you have an opt-in or an opt-out at 2025, how can I be liable for the last 11 years if you don't even know whether or not you're going to have one? Like that, to me, the moment they introduced that, which I believe was that first meeting, that first public board meeting, I think they worked it into that particular day. That was kind of a bombshell to me, Ira. I'm like, well, nobody.
Well, yeah.
My take on that day was, if it's false, they're going to shoot this down in like an hour, but they never came.
It was revealed in the meeting when they decided to file the lawsuit, because it was in the lawsuit that Florida State had prepared, that I was at OC before before the board actually decided to go through with it.
Yeah.
And when they did, but that was the first time it had been revealed, but it was something that the ACC attorneys learned when they went up there. And yeah, man, it was a huge bombshell. It kind of got overshadowed a little bit. Like in the story I wrote, I didn't make a huge deal of that initially, because it was just like, holy crap, Florida State's suing the ACC. Like that was the biggest thing. But in the story, I included it. And if that had been on its own, if they didn't sue, that would have been a huge story just on its own. That deal, that term applied, because I don't think Florida State knew that. And I think that's one of the arguments that Florida State will make as this process goes forward, is we signed the grant of rights thinking this TV contract went till 2036. Like, we didn't know it doesn't go till 2036. And we didn't know that Jim Phillips extended it. Even if we didn't know Jim Phillips extended it to, for 2 years without getting a vote from the schools.
For nothing. Yeah. Without trading anything. So yeah, that gets fun and dicey as we get closer to that August date. And that's really not, in legal terms, everybody, that's not that far away, August 15th, for Florida State to make that decision. All of the coverage of the soup and the fog of legal battles is here on warchant.com. It's $1 for your first month, $1 for your first month. Warchant.com is your headquarters for a lot of stuff. We never needed to open a legal wing until recently, but we've got that. We've got the team reporting, all of the sports. Obviously, Florida State softball and baseball are well on their way towards regionals and hopefully super regionals and beyond. We also have recruiting and the portal, and we're going to have a guest in just a moment, but I got to say goodnight to Ira. Ira, thank you very much, as always, on the Monday Smash, and anything that you want to promote on the way out.
Just go read Corey's column, and we got more recruiting coverage and transfer portal coverage, and also Seminole headlines tomorrow, so people should check out. I'm sure some of these topics will get fleshed out a little bit more, and Corey can tell me where I'm wrong. And,
there it is.
I'll laugh at him.
There's a lot of absolutism tomorrow, beginning at 1 o'clock. Make sure to get your questions in on Twitter, not Facebook. Make sure, for Ira's sake, file your questions on Twitter. That's what I do for my partner right here.
Thanks, Tom.
Smash. All right, we'll be back in 15 seconds with Michael Langston after this message from State Farm agent Russ Vorhis.
Contact Russ Vorhis for an auto quote today.
There he is. We spoke about every day in January when the portal was going, and we had visits, and there was this and there was that. Now it's time to get ratcheted up again with our Michael Langston, senior recruiting analyst. He's our guy in the portal as well. He and Matt Lasser doing a great job across the board on the premium recruiting board at warchant.com. Once again, $1 for your first month. Give us a chance to earn your business. We'll give you a little taste of that information that Michael has right now. Michael, good evening. How's it going these days?
Oh, good. Feel the summer. It's about to get hot. Got my car today. It was 95 degrees. So, yeah, we're getting ready for the crucial summer, and when summer hits, that means official visits and camps and a lot of stuff in June that's going to really be recruiting centric, where everyone's followed all the spring and all these guys of how they done the team wise, and now it's time to get down to brass tacks and have some serious official visitors coming, and man, did they have a lot of guys coming, especially that June 21st weekend. 21 official visitors already, so could be even more. Who knows? But it's the most I can remember seeing. I was talking to Matt with that today. So that 21st weekend is kind of the coup de grace, I think, of the visits for the summer. I think there's a lot of other visit weekends. There's some that have 9 and some have 7, and then they're sprinkled in with 3 or 4. But I think the June 21st weekend is the one that I've got circled that is going to be just massive.
Taking a look at that June 21st right now, Director Ben Spicer bringing that up. If you can, Director Ben, let's for this old man's eyes, zoom in just a little bit. A little Control Plus, Command Plus. Thank you. I see a name right there. That's for my. I need to go to the optometrist so bad. If there's anybody out there, you let me know if you want a sponsorship for glasses. Josh Petty. I'm going to stop the wheel right there. It's like the yodeler in Price is Right. Yodel. Wait, here we go. Josh Petty. Interior offensive lineman, at least that's what On3 has him as right now, but 6'4", 265. He's the number 2 interior offensive lineman in the country according to the On3 industry ranking. Why does that sound familiar? I feel listen to me. Why does that sound familiar, Michael? Florida State has the number 1 IOL committed, and now maybe I see an RPM is in for Josh Petty coming to Tallahassee. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, he's a guy that I went on Josh Newberg's show a day ago. We were breaking about the offensive line board. I told him that there's a surge going on with Petty. I wasn't ready to just, hey, FSU's a leader, but I'd heard a lot of buzz. The communication I've got around his name from the FSU circles had been really strong and more consistent than I've ever heard it. So I knew they were very much in the picture. Then Steve Wilfong put a pick out for FSU, which didn't shock me based on the intel I was getting. But I wasn't as brass as to put it out there as far as a pick. But I definitely think FSU is surging. I think that's the guy that visited in the spring and April, really connected with the family, and also just the offense in general. I think really he watched them practice, so he kind of envisioned himself in this situation, and I think if you a lot of people when they watch FSU, when Mike Norvell says, "Hey, this place is built for playmakers," but you're thinking receivers, but a lot of times it's built for playmakers to the offensive line because they're playmakers too. They make everything go in the front, and I think a lot of kids that visit see that. We've seen that with a lot of these kids that have visited FSU that they probably sit in a good position for, like Max Buchanan, 4-star out of Sanford Seminole. I think they already have a 5-star in Solomon Thomas, and then another guy, Zaire Addison, is another one that they've done a great job with early on. But they've seen how this team works, and it's just captivating as far as when kids visit. Now, you sometimes don't expect it to be one visit, but Josh Petty, I think they certainly got some surge of momentum going there.
So there's a bit of news out of Auburn. I don't know if you saw this, Michael. It just happened in the last 15, 20 minutes as we're
Okay.
here on Monday Smash. Tight end Hollis Davidson, tight end Hollis, he just decommitted from Auburn, which that could be an interesting development. I know we're jumping. I want to get back to the offensive line in just a minute because I feel like that's a big theme here for this upcoming class. But what do you think about Hollis Davidson decommitting from Auburn? I see you nodding.
Yeah, I'm not shocked. I told people this because a lot of people laughed when I told them this. Like when he did his visit, there was a lot of really. He did a visit in spring, early spring. My FSU intel said we really think it went really well. We feel like we knocked it out of the park. It was phenomenal. Hollis was more, I don't know, in control of not just letting everything out. And I was like, so I told people, like, telling you guys, they're much more in this than you think. He has an official visit. I think he plans to visit FSU officially, and that would be the team if there was going to be a team that he jumps to, I think it would be FSU based on that visit and just the relationships that he already has with Chris Thompson, Mike Norvell. So that doesn't surprise me. I kind of get a chuckle at that just because a lot of people thought he was so just locked in, but I just didn't get that impression based on the intel I was getting right after the visit, and I told people that, so that's why I was smiling and it was kind of funny to me, nodding. But that's definitely one that I'll monitor. I did not know about that, but I'm sure I'll look into that a little further. But that's kind of where I was at before even hearing that news of Hollis of where they're at, because they would like two tight ends in this class, and he's certainly a guy that's extremely high on their board that they like. So he's definitely one to watch.
6'6", 230, and the teams he's tied to are not slouches. Auburn obviously just decommitted.
Yeah.
Tennessee and Florida State. So yeah, this is an SEC caliber tight end based upon the offer list. So back to the offensive line. Here's a question from Tom. Seems like we're in the mix for several offensive linemen. Yes, many offensive linemen, I'd say.
Yeah.
Any of them that you would classify as a center? Well, what do you think, Michael?
Not really. I wouldn't classify any as a center per se that I've seen. That doesn't mean they can't play it. I just that hasn't been the wording I've heard. Is mainly interior or outside guys. Tackles. So I don't think they've really gotten into, like, there isn't like a pure guy that just plays center. So I'm sure a lot of these guys like Max Buchanan and others, they can play multiple positions. They're versatile. They can do a lot of different things, and center could certainly be a place that they play. Even Solomon Thomas, who's committed, he could also potentially do that. But it's not something I've heard that there's a classified center in the class yet.
Makes sense. We have been a Maury Smith and bust or bust kind of a team for a few years, so we'll see if they cultivate some options. Obviously, that are already on the roster. R. Wilmer has put this in the chat a few times, and I understand why, but he's hoping for the same excitement from the defensive line, especially defensive tackle, on the recruiting board.
Yeah.
Any news on that front? He asks.
Yeah. I don't know your first name, but but if you go to the front page, we have a hot board, a defensive tackle hot board that I just posted. I think there's two guys in there. I think people can read between the leaves. I'm not going to tell everyone what was in there, but there's two guys in there that I feel FSU sits in a pretty good spot with as far as the recruitment right now. Do I think it's going to be the level offensive line? No, because I think this has the chance to be the best offensive line class I've ever seen and covered at FSU overall. So it's hard to compare the two sides, but I do think it could be a really good class because I think they would like two or three in this class for the defensive tackle position. That's the most focused position for them to really hit. Obviously, they have a lot of guys that transfer portal they got in there, but you're probably going to lose some guys. So I think it's a position they know they need to hit on at least two. If they can get three, that's just a perfect scenario. But I think if you get two solid, really good, talents, I think they'd be pretty excited. And so far, it's a good sign. It's a lot better than what I've seen in the previous years as far as going into these summer official visits. So there's definitely you see a possibility and you see the kind of pathway to get to that two or three mark right now based on kind of how the hot board sits.
So back to the offensive line real quick. I know we're bouncing back and forth,
Yeah,
forth.
it's okay.
What has evolved for Florida State in terms of high school offensive recruiting? Is it just it's in the results? Florida State's winning football games. What do you think has been the difference in putting Alex Atkins and this staff in a position to land this kind of O-line class?
I think it's one, it's development of what kids see of guys coming into the program. Not so much yet with the high school kids that they've got. There's a few in there that I think are going to balloon up and blow up. I think Jalen Early is one of the early, big candidates for me. That will blow up. That are guys that he's developed from the bottom. Since they got him and they signed. But I think the job he does with guys that haven't been in the program, the development, and the way he coaches, in the way the offense looks. There's no question. I'm not saying anything Tom doesn't already know when I say FSU wants to run the ball.
Yeah.
And offensive linemen love schools that allow them to run, because run is just effort, pushing, controlling your base, controlling where the line's going, controlling where the ball is going. And with FSU, they run a lot of variety stuff, and that just gets even people more excited. I think a lot of offensive linemen in high school, they're not as defined in the pro set as far as pass pro and all that stuff. So the run stuff is just, it's a more comfort thing. But I think it's also the way Atkins teaches, his development, the way he gets the message across. It's kind of somewhere I trait to just what Patrick Surtain does at the cornerback. He gets the reception that he's looking for. He gets the reaction he's looking for, the coaching and the teaching. And because coaching only matters when the other guy that you're teaching, can show you what they're doing. And I think that's what, it gravitates kids to this team. Plus the offense is exciting. They throw, they pass, they do a lot of different multiple sets of ways they use guys, where it's tight end, receiver, running back, and even offensive line. They love to rotate if they can. And I think it's his teaching ways, the way he is personality wise, it just resonates with a lot of these guys.
So we learned so this is a multi-year mystery, Michael. You asked and he answered. R. Wilmer's first name is Ray. He's been
All right.
posting on Warchant TV forever, and now,
Okay.
as long as I remember the first time, the next time you post Ray, I'm going to say Ray Wilmer from now on. Thank you.
I will remember that.
Yeah.
I'm good at remembering things, so I will remember Ray.
So Mark has a question. He's talking about, this is the old school like Jimbo question about territories and who
There you go.
recruits there. Remember how he divvied up South Florida and how
Yeah.
successful that was? That was a sight to see. Mark wants to know, who are FSU's top recruiters for Tampa, Orlando, and Southwest Florida?
Well, I think Orlando, I'll start with there. That's the easy one for me because that's David Johnson. He does the majority of the recruiting in Orlando. Very popular. Kids love him. Probably definitely kills it. Odell is the one in Tampa, but that's kind of a mixture of several coaches. I think it really depends on the position, but most of the time, I think Odell controls a lot of that. And Southwest Florida is morely Adam Fuller or Tony Tokarts. It's kind of a mixture of both of those guys. They're the main guys that handle those areas. And I think all three of them are very popular. They do a good job. They resonate with kids and all that things. So that might change now. I know you can't put them on the road, but you have Ernie Sims in there now. So Ernie's got some strong ties to the Tampa area. So I'm sure Tampa is going to be popular with, you'll hear Ernie Sims' name a lot with kids that visit.
Ernie's got a chance to stay around, doesn't he, Michael?
Yeah.
That might stick. So let me ask you then about that position group. That's actually what I wanted to know, because there's always a selfish question, and this one might be the last one of the night. We'll see. Linebacker recruiting. It seems like this class has a chance. Like 2025 as a cycle has a real chance with some big time names, cerebral, athletic players. Talk to me about linebacker recruiting, because, and I'll add one more footnote. I think the two freshmen that they brought in, though they might not be heralded in the ranking services, Hickman, Collins, and Parrish, they look a little different to me too. Is there an uptick in your eyes of what you've seen?
Yeah, I was going to say before I start, when I went to spring practice, the position that flashed at me a lot in all three ones I went to was linebacker. I was really impressed with the Cryer kid. There was a few other kids, Sean Murphy, a lot of guys that really jumped out to me the more than what I've seen. So development wise, I don't think that's the problem that FSU fans have with what they say at linebacker. The work they did with Tatum, the work they did with Kalen and these other guys. Omar Graham's another one that probably is going to play, good amount. But yeah, the linebacker recruiting feels a little bit different this year. You already have 4-star linebacker Ethan Pritchard. He's already in the fold. Sanford Seminole is a teammate of Max Buchanan, who I mentioned earlier on the offense line. So you already have him. I think they're likely to get Tavion Wallace. He's another 4-star linebacker. So they sit pretty good for him. And then you look at these official visits. I think Ty Jackson's on there, another 4-star linebacker. So there's several guys. I think they're going to be able to, smile a little bit just on what they've done so far, based on, I can only go by what I have right now, guys, and the criteria and the way it's trending and developing. And so far, I think it's been fairly positive of that linebacker position. It feels a little different. Before, it just feels like pushed and rushed, and man, is this guy going to give us a visit or stuff like that? But this year, it feels like there's more of a receptive attitude with high school recruiting, compared to what I've seen before. And maybe a lot of that's what Tatum and Kalen have done on the field that's really just caught their attention, or maybe it's just the defense in general with Adam Fuller that's really they're loving it and they kind of envision themselves being in it. So I think they've done a pretty good job so far.
If I'm a linebacker that's get after the quarterback, Michael, just the difference between say 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And Kalen DeLoach's speed helps. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like, there are very few who could move like that.
Right.
The blitz packages seemed like they got home more this last year. They seem more fun. Having great defensive tackles helps that, obviously, but it seems like it was a lot more fun to play this defense last year, and kids love to have fun as they're playing, so that would make sense to me. In terms of, I know that they got visits lined up starting in June, and it culminates on the 21st. But for those of us out here who are wondering what's next on warchant.com, what's coming up on the recruiting board, go ahead and promote what's coming up.
So, the official visits start like May 31st for FSU. People can go down the list. I think, Ben just showed you kind of a glimpse of just the 21st. What I characterize when I watch the 21st is, man, look at the offensive linemen that are coming in for that weekend. Massive guys. I didn't even mention Ty Haywood. He's another 5-star that he will visit that weekend. Offensive line. You got a chance to reel in Zaire Addison on that 21st. So that's kind of the storyline for me in the 21st. But we're still doing the hot board. I'm working on the defense, guys. I'm close to finishing in the defensive ends. I've already told you about the defensive tackles up there. So next 3 days, I'm going to be working on this defensive end hot board, and that can be challenging because there's a lot of really top tier talent. So I'll be doing that. Linebackers, we just talked about it. I'll be doing that, and then we'll get down to the final position of DBs with safeties and corners, which is going to be pretty loaded as well. So that's what I have coming up. Matt's got you guys covered on the portal stuff. Just broke some news today. A new defensive lineman is in the picture that we've learned. So Matt's on that. So I'm sure Matt will have a lot more about what's coming up. Just had a visitor last weekend. Seems to be everything went really good, but man, the competition is tough. Tom, Michigan, SC. There's tons of teams in there. So I do feel like I will close this. Like I do feel like and they and Corey wrote an article today, and I kind of touched on it before I jumped in that there's not a lot of spots that they can do because it's hard to maneuver around what they have on their roster. So, like maybe a couple spots. It definitely seems like they want a defensive tackle, and it feels like they would like a receiver or best available at that other position. Outside that, it's going to be tough to go past that 2 mark to add to it. But overall, I think they're active. They'll have guys, but they're going to be selective. They're going to be very patient. If it has to wait to the last minute, they're going to do it. And I think that's kind of where it sits, and it kind of tells you how they feel about their roster too.
Yeah, exactly. Michael, I thought there would be a lot more turnover, but there's 2 parts to that. You got to have somebody that you want to bring in as an upgrade if you're going to tell somebody to get out or say to explore your options if you're going to be a little bit kinder about it. And the other part is, Michael, it seems like the market is so thin that let's just make a metric out of it. Dollars per snap. It seems like you're spending an awful lot of money for not a lot of snaps or production right now because there's high demand, but there's not a whole lot of supply.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I had a few FSU contacts. They're like, and they were kind of downplaying what FSU's done. They were like, they just didn't really like the spring portal, what they've seen. They weren't a lot of, as you mentioned, productive numbers of guys that can't miss, like, hey, these guys can come in there. So I think that plays into it, but it's also, I tell you, I mean, there's a reason FSU hits so high, hits higher probably than anybody from the portal guys. It's because they're selective and there's a certain criteria they look for. And if you don't meet that, they're not going to go after you. It doesn't matter if you're a 4 or 5-star or you're productive out of the wazoo. If they don't feel the fit is there, they're not going to do it. And that's why their hit rate's so high. That's why they've done so well in the portal. So I would tell that to people that are kind of impatient about the portal, but it's like I do feel comfortable they'll get a defensive tackle, but outside of that, we'll see. But they're not going to bring somebody in that doesn't fit kind of and mesh with the talent they have, because you got to remember there's other guys that haven't played, that we haven't seen take a step forward yet, and ones that the FSU staff probably feels good about.
That's again, if we're going to say it before the portal opens, that the coaching staff will tell us how they feel. Even when they do nothing, they're telling you how they feel. You got to stay true to that. Don't be hypocritical about it.
Yep.
Thank you for making us, Warchant TV, a fit for your Monday night. We really appreciate you all out there in Warchant TVville, be it on YouTube, on Facebook, on X/Twitter for tuning in. And we hope you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel on the way out. Do not forget to head over to warchant.com. If you haven't subscribed yet, give us a shot to earn your business. You will love it around there. It's the largest FSU fan community there is in the business with the best information. Michael just gave a rundown of an awful lot of it. We've got more over there on the premium recruiting board. So thanks to everybody who chimed in tonight. We also want to thank, again, Mr. Detweiler, Harry Detweiler, for his contribution to the program. State Farm agent Russ Voorhis for sponsoring. As always, Russ, you rock. You're the man. Director Ben behind the scenes, and Ira Schoffel, managing editor of warchant.com, for his contributions tonight. For Michael Langston, senior recruiting analyst here at warchant.com, my name is Tom Lang. We will talk to you next time on the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. Good night.